This is King Azoulay.
But they call me the Batman. They say you're fucking fit, you know how to fight, you know how to work with weapons, you have money.
I have longer pinky nails than my girl. My pinky nail is long. The biggest question is that a nail? There's something called microfractions. Little microfractions that you cause with hitting the bone, thickens the bone. I used to sit there and hit my shins with a hammer all fucking day.
Everybody gets beat up, everybody gets knocked the fuck out, everybody's going to sleep. Once everybody's asleep, then I ask what happened.
King Azoulay is a wannabe alpha male influencer who is using Andrew Tate-like methodologies to try and become famous online. He tells wild, over-the-top stories that are so ridiculous it's actually unbelievable he thinks he can convince people that they're true.
I've taken on not one, not two guys. I fought 30 guys at the same time and they couldn't take me out.
You fought 30 guys?
30 guys at the same time. They got to the point that they said, okay, fuck you, you motherfucker. We're done with you. You don't want to stop. I have this switch, you better kill me. It's almost like I took PCP.
King Azoulay also does the stereotypical alpha male shtick where he rents supercars and luxury properties so he can act like he owns them in order to look successful. He does this because, like all of these online alpha male gurus, he has scammy online courses and coaching calls he sells to insecure men. According to the ChatGPT description written about Ben on his website, Ben retired at the age of 24 after selling patents for $150 million. Since then, he's invested in hundreds of businesses as a venture capitalist and took an active role in 16 businesses that have generated over $500 million in sales. He won multiple medals in bodybuilding competitions and has competed in many cage fights around the world. None of these claims, especially the cage fighting one, can be backed up or looked up to find at all. This is just the fairy tale story Ben is peddling to his audience. Also, I say this is a ChatGPT description because if you look at his YouTube description, you can clearly see the way Ben actually types. Like a third grader. At 17, I was homeless due to a rough childhood. I ended up in a jail and thought my life will change due to my circumstance, but here today to say if I did it, anyone can. Oh jeez. I will do everything I can to teach you everything needed to know so you can achieve what I call the holy triangle. Almost every single letter here is capitalized and there's little to no punctuation in sight. Now I know this is just a minute detail in the grand scheme of things, but I just find it funny how illiterate this guy is. He acts like he's the smartest guy on the planet when in reality he can't put a simple sentence together correctly. The absolute worst part about King Azoulay is the fact that he has recently been exposed by the YouTuber John Bravo for being a pedophile that raped a 15-year-old girl with his friends.
He does this all for social media fame because he's trying to sell programs to kids to try to teach them to become men. But while I was investigating all the bullshit lies this asshole's telling to see if any of it's true, I uncovered something that I wish I never saw because it's so dirty and evil and unbelievable and something that I didn't think is possible for a human being to do to another person. The last thing this asshole should ever be doing is anything involving children.
This actually might be the worst social media alpha male I've ever come across. King Azoulay, whose real name is Ben, began posting TikTok videos back in April of 2022. His original posts were just videos of himself cartoonishly flexing in the mirror. It wouldn't take long before the flexing turned into very basic motivational speaking.
You guys know that between the hours of 8 p.m. to 12 a.m., any hour that you sleep counts like 2 hours of sleep. If you sleep at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., you'll automatically wake up recharged at about 3 a.m.
It was clear from the start that King Azoulay set his vision on becoming yet another typical Andrew Tate clone we've seen time and time again. Ben also likes to call himself king because he believes he is a descendant of King Solomon, and that's where he gets all of his wisdom from.
And you just said you're a descendant of King Solomon. Mm-hmm. Now, is your first name's not King? Is it King?
No, Ben.
Ben.
I named myself King once I found that out. And then I grew my beard.
So,
and I realized I have his wisdom.
It was passed down?
It was passed down 100%. I felt something for a very long time.
That's right, this guy unironically thinks he has some kind of ancient wisdom passed down by a king from thousands of years ago. Ben never even explains why he thinks he's connected to King Solomon, he just broadly states he's a direct descendant of him, and that's that. A lot of what Ben does on social media is what I define as motivational slop. Motivational slop is when guys like Ben sit in front of their cameras and repeat the most baseline and useless quotes while trying to equate them to their disillusioned success. They do this to sell the idea that they're successful and drive people to buy their pointless online courses and coaching calls, which of course is exactly what Ben does. This is what you can expect from a typical King Azoulay post.
If you're a young boy and you're in a situation where you're an F student, let me tell you something, you got a bright future, buddy. You see, an A student is the perfect employee. He works for me and he does his job perfectly. A B student, now that's my manager. My managers are great, but they're always going to be managers. The C students, now those are business owners. Then you got the D. D is between a business owner and an inventor. It's someone that owns a business but truly wants to invent something, he just doesn't know how to do it. And then you got the F student. The F students are inventors. They're so fucking creative that they couldn't sit in class. They couldn't listen because whatever people were trying to put in their head, they knew it was fucking bullshit.
Now, I absolutely will not bore you with any more of that kind of content. That actually would feel like some kind of crime. Something like cruel and unusual punishment to my audience. Instead, I will focus on showing you some of the insanely ridiculous stories Ben has told and show you how these tall tales eventually led to him exposing himself as a child predator. It starts with the story of how when Ben was a child, he came to America and spoke no English. Apparently, at just 10 years old, he would become a regular at a Chinese food restaurant. The owner would eventually fall in love with him for some strange reason and started teaching him special kung fu.
When I was first of all younger, before I arrived to the US, I used to watch Bruce Lee all the time. We moved here, I didn't speak any fucking word in English. I didn't speak one word in English. What I did find was a Chinese restaurant right across the street. When I used to go there, eventually the owner fell in love with me and he said, that kid is special. There it was about 3:30 to 4:30. It was the time that I left school and I would come to him. He would move all of the tables and he would teach me kung fu. And I was 10 years old. It was different and I loved it.
This is literally the story from the movie Karate Kid. It's just rewritten so Ben is the main character and the Chinese restaurant owner is Mr. Miyagi. Whatever the Chinese restaurant owner taught Ben clearly wouldn't help him, as he would go on to tell a different story about how when he was 13 years old, he would get jumped by 30 guys at a house party. After getting jumped, he would go out and somehow buy a fucking Uzi in order to intimidate any of his future attackers.
I got my ass kicked one time in my life. I was 13 years old. I got jumped by about 30 guys outside of a house party. After that, I purchased an Uzi. Nobody ever jumped me again. Nobody ever said anything again. I was ready to die, and I was ready to take everybody with me.
The jokes just write themselves in this video. Ben's insane lies about his life absolutely don't end here. The next illegitimate story he told was that when he was 15 years old, he got into a bar fight and beat up 6 people at once. He goes to fight a 7th person when they pull out a gun and say they're from the mafia. This totally legit mafia member then gives the 15-year-old Ben a proposition to join an underground fight club in order to make money. No, I'm not kidding. Now he's trying to retcon the story of the movie Fight Club as something that actually happened in his real life.
So I started doing underground fights at about the age of 15. The way it started, I was at a hookah bar. And there was a group of guys, and I used to look at people to see if they're looking at me. I thought everybody was against me. So I got into it with some of these guys, and I ended up beating the fuck out of 6 of them. They were all older than me. A guy pulls out a gun, and tells me to stop. I look at him, and I say, shoot me. That was the time my mom got cancer. I wanted to die. And he goes, I'm not gonna shoot you, what's your name? And I said, what the fuck are you to ask me my name? I said, shoot me. He said, no. I want you to be one of us. And we got in a conversation, and when he found out I was 15, he was shocked. I'm not gonna mention his name, but we're talking somebody from the mob. And I started doing underground fights for him. I also was his bodyguard for a while. And then it was a time that I felt very powerful.
When Ben got older, he claims he eventually went to train with Shaolin monks at their temple. Yeah, he somehow made it to China. Just use your imagination on how he managed to get there. I mean, it's what Ben does after all. He goes on to tell a story about how the monks taught him to hit his shins with hammers every day to make them stronger.
There's something called microfractions. Little microfractions that you cause with hitting the bone thickens the bone. I used to sit there and hit my shins with a hammer all fucking day.
He also said the monks taught him to ram his skull into walls for hours every day because the skull is the strongest bone in the body, and ramming it into walls will cause microfractures, thus making it stronger over time.
You know why people wear boxing gloves? So they don't fuck up their hands by hitting somebody's head. Your head is the strongest bone in the body. And if you train it and bang it enough for a whole year, it becomes 4 times thicker. When we hurt, we cry. And I learned that at a young age. That's what I learned from the Shaolin monks.
If these stories were somehow true, I think those monks were just messing with Ben. They probably got a good laugh watching this idiot run headfirst into the temple walls. Also, the skull isn't even the strongest bone in the body like he claims, that's the femur. The femur is the longest and heaviest bone in the body and bears the weight of the entire upper body, thus making it the strongest. Not to get all sciencey on you guys, I just think it's funny how wrong this dude is about some of the simplest things you can figure out with a cursory 10-second Google search. Ben claims he would use this totally real knowledge he picked up from the Shaolin monks to do things like fight a group of 30 guys and win. He really likes the idea of fighting 30 people at one time, it seems.
I know how to fight very, very well. I've taken on not 1, not 2 guys. I fought 30 guys at the same time and they couldn't take me out.
You fought 30 guys.
30 guys at the same time. They got to the point that they said, okay, fuck you, you motherfucker. We're done with you. You don't want to stop. I have this switch. You better kill me. It's almost like I took PCP.
This is yet another movie reference, this time being Bruce Lee. In one of the Bruce Lee movies, Bruce takes on an entire group of people that are messing with a Chinese shop owner and wins. Sound familiar? Ben here loves cosplaying as his favorite movie characters so much that he makes up fake stories about his life in order to feel like he is more like them. Another insane lie Ben would tell about his life on a podcast was that he somehow worked for the FBI's counterterrorism unit at some point. He would then leave his job at the FBI so he could pursue a social media career. Ben would tell this lie on the Droppin' Bombs podcast, and even the host, Brad Lee, couldn't believe what he was hearing.
I told you, I worked in counterterrorism for over a decade. So for me, I wasn't allowed to be even on social media or any of these things. And even today, I'm not allowed to even speak about what unit I was in, things like that, for the next 5 years. I can't share it with anybody, but
There's a lot of people out there that would say, now that's where I'm calling bullshit.
That's fine. Nobody cares.
And
I don't
it's
care.
Convenient that you can't talk about it so no one can verify.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's units that are called invisible units.
I'm not doubting you. I always give everyone the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I don't care.
But if I were to question it, I would say, well, wait a minute. At 17, you were homeless. At 18, right. 19, you were cleaning carpets. Then you got into telemarketing. Then you went, then you started doing real estate, and you started investing here and there, and that was only 10 years ago. So when was the counterterrorism?
Yeah.
And who is it for? The Israeli army?
Well, it's Israel and the United States. You work with both.
That's the CIA.
That's because, no. Counterterrorism is a little bit different.
Yeah, so we're supposed to believe, 1, that this guy worked for the FBI, and 2, he then quit that FBI job to do this?
Do it with pizzazz. Every hour spent in isolation makes it easier to face annihilation. I'ma do it with pizzazz.
For a brief moment, let's try and piece together the current story he's trying to sell here. Ben became an underground fight club champion for the mob at 15 years old. After that, he went to China and trained with Shaolin monks to become some kind of unstoppable force. Then he moved into sales and allegedly retired at 24 years old after selling $150 million worth of so-called patents. But he also worked for the FBI for close to a decade, so he didn't really retire at all if this is to be believed. And then he quits the FBI job to sell online alpha male courses? I'm sorry, but who would sell these bullshit courses after supposedly retiring with an over $150 million net worth while also working for the FBI? Do you see how insanely convoluted all of this is and how none of what this guy says makes any sense at all? And that's not even taking account of the fact that Ben also claims to have gone to jail at some point in this fake timeline. That's right, Ben somehow manages to shoehorn a story in about going to prison somewhere amongst all of these other lies. Except this detail about going to jail happens to be one of the only things Ben was honest about, and it would inevitably expose him as a child predator. In a video titled "My Story and My Reasons," Ben claims that he went to jail for something that he didn't do, but he doesn't really expand on the details of this statement.
I got arrested. And I got arrested for something that they said that I did, and I didn't do it. And when I got out all clean after I spent a little bit of time in jail, I said, I'm never coming back here again.
While Ben claims he went to jail for something he didn't do, that couldn't be further from the truth. The true details behind what he actually did are horrendous. The real story behind Ben's criminal charge would be discovered by the YouTuber John Bravo. John began covering Ben simply because of the wildly untrue stories he was telling that I just went over. Because Ben was so vague about why he went to jail, John decided to dig a little deeper into that story to find out if there was any truth behind the claim. What John discovered was horrible. I'd like to issue a content warning before going over the details behind Ben Azoulay's criminal charge that was discovered by John Bravo. In 2008, Ben Azoulay pled guilty to sexually assaulting a minor. The things Ben did to a 15-year-old girl with his brother and friend are downright disturbing, and it's truly a disgrace he spent such little time behind bars for his actions. Because Ben comes up with such insane lies to deflect the fact that he pled guilty to this, even going as far as painting himself out to be a hero for sexually assaulting a minor, I think it's important to cover the true details behind his crime. John Bravo managed to uncover court documents that describes in detail what happened to a 15-year-old girl who will be named H when they were convinced by Ben and his friends to go to Ben's house for a party. After they managed to get H back to Ben's house, the group would then purposely get this minor intoxicated with alcohol and high from marijuana to a point where she was completely incapacitated. After that, this group of sickos took turns brutally sexually assaulting this minor throughout the night. I won't read all of the court documents as I feel that it's simply unnecessary. However, I will cover the more damning pieces of evidence and especially the parts that disprove Ben's future retelling of events. The court documents state, after being supplied alcohol and marijuana by defendants Ben and Dylan Azoulay, H was forcibly dragged into a bedroom by Ben, who stripped her of her clothes and forced her to perform oral sex on him, and then performed oral sex on her against her will. Ben then proceeded to brutally force himself upon H, beating her and raping her against her will. Other boys, including Dylan and Mare, watched while this was going on, but made no effort to stop Ben. H struggled to keep Ben away, but was overpowered and told not to fight. H attempted to leave several times, but was prevented from doing so. In fact, each time she attempted to escape, she was pulled back into the room and subjected to further sexual assault. After Ben had finished ravaging H, he passed her to his brother Dylan, who dragged her from Ben's room to Dylan's room. Dylan pinned her on her back and had sex with H against her will. While raping her, he bit her neck. Dylan and Ben flipped H onto her stomach, face down, and she was again raped from behind by both of the brothers. During this, one or more of the boys had anal sex with her. To make matters worse, a majority of this occurred while Ben and Dylan's parents were home. Additional court documents state this: while H was being raped and brutalized in their home, defendants Rachel and David Azoulay, parents of defendants Dylan and Ben, returned from a party. Ignoring girls' voices they heard in the house and backyard, Mr. and Miss Azoulay did nothing to intervene the party going on and instead simply retreated to their bedroom. Approximately 30 minutes later, Miss Azoulay heard yelling from outside and a girl screaming. Outside, she saw her sons, Ben and Dylan, 3 other boys, 2 extremely intoxicated underage girls, beer cans, and bottles of whiskey and vodka. Rachel Azoulay then watched Mare take H, who she knew to be drunk and underage, out of the backyard through a side door and did nothing to stop them. H would essentially get dumped out onto the street where she fled and called her parents to come pick her up. Seeing the horrible condition she was in, they took her to the hospital and called the police immediately. Defendants are convicted for the violent crimes they committed against H. The final court documents state this: defendants are convicted for the violent crimes they committed against H. Ben, Dylan, and Mare were subsequently arrested and interviewed by the police. Ben and Dylan admitted to knowing H was underage and highly intoxicated and admitted to having sexual contact with H. Ben was prosecuted as an adult. Dylan and Mare were both charged as minors. Ben admitted his guilt in open court, and he was convicted on the charge of violating Penal Code Section 288 AB1, oral copulation with a minor. Dylan also admitted his guilt and was convicted in a juvenile proceeding on the charge of violating Penal Code Section 261 A3, rape of an intoxicated/unconscious person. H is informed and believes that due to a prosecutorial error, Mare escaped conviction, although he too was clearly guilty of the acts alleged above. Ben would subsequently spend a short amount of time in jail for this, as well as his brother Dylan spending time in a juvenile detention facility. After John Bravo discovered this horrendous secret Ben was trying to hide, he continued to look into Ben's past and found even more damning information about him.
People from his past, men, women with stories, came and shared information about this asshole with me. And then also I looked into his criminal background. He had warrants, domestic violence issues, restraining orders, and to top it all off, he went to great lengths to hide it all from the internet.
One of the first new pieces of information John found was that Ben tried to legally change his last name. This was in order to try and make it harder to find information about his sexual assault charges.
He went to great lengths to try to hide all his history online, right? Very hard to find information on this asshole, but if you know where to look, you could definitely find things, right? But I'm gonna show you here a document now on the screen, and you know what this is? This is this asshole trying to change his name to Ben Aston. And the reason why he wanted to change it was because he knew he was going online. He didn't want people looking up his information, right? So he did his best to hide it. So he filed this, a name change, with the court. But when he went to file it, the court said, fuck you. We're not allowing you to change your name because you have a warrant out for your arrest, you asshole, and we're not going to allow you to change your name.
Talk about an incredibly slimy move, but thankfully it was denied by a judge in court. John Bravo also discovered that Ben has an ex-wife and child that filed a restraining order on him and moved halfway across the country in order to get away from him. On top of that, John reveals that Ben has been trying to file false privacy complaints against his video exposing his evil crime in order to try and get it taken down. So, if this video suddenly disappears one day, you'll know it's because Ben is trying to do the same thing to me. Ben would eventually respond in a now deleted video in one of the most insane ways I've ever seen someone try and disprove the fact that he's a convicted child predator. He would claim the Matrix is out to get him and then compare himself to people like Andrew Tate, Donald Trump, and Cristiano Ronaldo.
There's a saying: if you're not smart enough like a Jew to make your own money, better learn how to sue one. I mean, you clearly know the stories about Andrew Tate, you know the story of Donald Trump. You guys know Cristiano Ronaldo.
Ben would also claim that he actually never did any of this and nobody touched the victim H. He follows that statement up by saying that he always wanted to tell people about his sexual assault charges. He just thought he would be asked on a podcast why he went to jail, and then he would have explained why. This is a glaringly obvious lie, as he has been on multiple podcasts and he has been asked multiple times why he went to jail, with each time Ben vaguely stating it was for fighting people.
Until I got out of jail at 19.
When did you go to jail?
When I was 18.
What did you go for jail for?
I was fighting people all the time.
So you spent a year in jail?
Not a year. They gave me a year, but I left after a few months.
Okay.
Ben would go on to tell his own version of what happened the night he, his brother, and his friend were arrested for raping a 15-year-old. In Ben's story, he makes H out to be a troubled girl who was demanding sex from someone at a party. He claims his friend Mare tried in front of everyone but couldn't, and eventually took this girl home with nobody ever touching her.
Nothing like that ever happened. She then went to my brother and tried to get with him. My brother didn't want to, but at the same time, this girl was very adamant about getting somebody to hook up with her. So we're hanging in the backyard, and she sits next to one of the young men who was 17 years old and asked him, will you sleep with me? And I told him, you guys cannot go in my house. If you want, you guys could do it here. So they tried it in front of everybody. And then next thing that happened was, it didn't work for him. So a few seconds after, they stopped, and they were just sitting down and hanging out with us. You know, young people having drinks, trying to test something they haven't tested before, doing things around people. Okay. Things happen when you're a young adult.
This is an insane retelling of events that don't match up with what the court records state at all. Remember, Ben admitted to the cops that he had sexual contact with H and even pled guilty to his crimes in court, and so did his brother, so claiming he never touched her is incredibly dishonest. These weren't the only blatant lies Ben told in this response video. He would go on to say that this whole situation was a money grab and that the cops and judge didn't even believe this happened. He would also make the insane claim that even the doctors who examined H didn't believe this happened and that there was no evidence of a rape.
Do whatever you want. We didn't do this. So we went back and forth to courts. And eventually, when the judge looked into it, and the DA looked into it, and the officers and doctors, they realized that there wasn't a rape. Nobody raped anybody. This was a bunch of young people who were hanging out, drinking some alcohol, and a young girl that went back home to strict parents.
This directly contradicts the court filings that John Bravo would provide that includes the doctor's medical examination findings of H after the assault. H escapes and is rushed to the hospital by her parents. At approximately 5:05 a.m., Richard and Judy Blank received a phone call from H. She was crying and asked her parents to come pick her up at the corner of Dory Place in West Hills. Richard and Judy arrived to find H still intoxicated and vomiting. Richard and Judy brought H home and called 911 immediately. Paramedics responded and H was transported to the hospital. H was examined by a trauma nurse who found evidence of vaginal and anal tearing, bite marks, and bruising. Ben was not done with his revisionist history and continued to spew out more lies after this. He would make this case out to be some big money grab because 2 years after he pled guilty to assaulting H, the family decided to sue him for damages. Ben states that the judge would come to him and make him an offer. He says the judge told him that he knew no rape had occurred, but H and her family needed justice. The judge would then tell Ben that if he pleads guilty and goes to jail, that he will drop the lawsuit and save his parents from losing money, making Ben some kind of hero.
The judge says, listen, I have a great deal and we can finish all of this. I'll tell them to remove the $50 million lawsuit because what they need is real justice. But I'll also let them know that there wasn't any and that they're going to lose this case regardless. So how about we do that?
This doesn't make sense for a variety of different reasons. The first and most obvious one being the fact that this lawsuit wasn't even happening at the time of Ben's arrest and sentencing. Ben was arrested and pled guilty in 2008 and was sued 2 years later in 2010. So this fake offer the judge supposedly gave him wouldn't have even been possible. Also, criminal and civil cases are handled entirely different. No judge would be able to affect the outcome of a totally different case in a different legal jurisdiction they don't preside over. This terrible response video was dissected by John Bravo himself, where he provided even more disturbing court records that showed this wasn't the first time Ben and his brother sexually assaulted minors after getting them intoxicated.
This is where it gets even worse, because I was going over those 140 pages of documents again, and it's a civil case. The parents were getting sued, right? There was a passage that says this asshole, Ben, and his brother not only did this to this 15-year-old girl, right? They did this to other underage girls and got them drunk and took advantage of them, and that the parents should have known about this and they should have never allowed what happened that night. Premises liability against defendants David Azoulay and Rachel Azoulay. This is their parents, okay, saying that they're responsible for what happened in their house. Now, this is the important part. H is informed and believes, and on this basis alleges that defendants David and Rachel Azoulay knew or should have known that defendant Ben Azoulay had been previously charged with criminal acts, knew or should have known that alcohol had been and continued to be consumed by minors on their property, including Ben and Dylan Azoulay, and knew or should have known that defendants Ben and Dylan Azoulay had previously had intercourse with underage and or intoxicated girls. So this is saying that they had priors to all of this, and the parents should have known. It was foreseeable to defendants David and Rachel Azoulay that defendants Ben and Dylan Azoulay would have had sexual intercourse with and performed acts of oral relation on underage girls if they continue to allow alcohol to be consumed by minors, including defendants Ben and Dylan Azoulay and Mayor Vareed on their property.
It wouldn't take long before Ben would decide to delete this video and act like he never posted it. He would, however, continue to post things like this on his YouTube community tab. This image where he says, "Here is the proof, the case was officially dismissed," shows the 2010 civil case that was settled out of court. This is not the 2008 criminal case that he pled guilty to, so this literally proves nothing. This was also quickly deduced in the comment section where absolutely nobody is believing these lies Ben is putting out. The civil case was dismissed. The criminal case was not dismissed. Bro's not escaping the allegations. The dismissal of the suit was because his parents settled, and then they were so stupid that they filed against their own homeowner's insurance. The homeowner's insurance denied their claim, and it is on record. It was denied because Rachel and David's dastardly duo had a history of degenerate behavior, and the homeowner's insurance discovered it. Thank you, John Bravo Films. Ben Azoulay's next course of action would be to challenge the person who exposed him, John Bravo, to a cage fight. I'm not kidding. Nothing screams, "I'm innocent," more than trying to fight the person who is exposing you. Let's set up a legit cage fight. If this interests you, DM me and we will set it up. Other than that, I'll let you stay a ghost in my world. John Bravo knew by this point Ben was desperate and running out of options. This was clearly a Hail Mary last-ditch effort for some attention that John was not going to give him. He responded to this in a video titled, "Alpha Man threatens my life for exposing his dark past," and he left a pinned comment that pretty much sums up his thoughts in a short and concise manner. "This piece of shit wants to handle me in a different way. I'm not interested in being his 31st victim." Also, he would not want cameras around if there was an actual real fight because he wouldn't want anyone seeing what becomes of him. However, as we know, there is no way this dude is fighting anybody but a defenseless minor. He wants to build up to a fight and to talk about it, but he will never show up. It's the clout that he wants. After this, Ben would insanely post a second video attempting to debunk all of the evidence that John Bravo has provided that has proved he is a child predator and he has pled guilty to sexually assaulting a minor. The second response video to these claims is somehow so much worse than the first video. Ben claims he spent the last 6 weeks going over court records in order to prove himself innocent. That's right, he actually did the meme of, "Guys, I investigated my own sex crime that I pled guilty to, and it turns out I'm actually innocent." Over the course of almost 22 minutes, Ben makes a multitude of insane claims like, the judge was trying to teach him a lesson by making him plead guilty to a sex crime with a minor because the year prior he was accused of domestic violence with a different woman.
So at the time when she told me in the car that she cheated on me, I yelled at her. She pushed me, said, "Don't yell at me." I smacked her in the back of the head. Shit happens, you're a young boy. I was 17 years old. So the judge wanted to teach me a lesson. So that way I don't have involvements like that any longer. And I didn't.
Ben would then blame his lawyer for making him take a plea deal instead of trying to fight his case.
My stupid lawyer had me take a plea deal instead of saying, "I want to get her to the stand." These boys didn't do anything, but he didn't do that. He took his money and he ran off with it. Stuck me with a fucked up deal for something I didn't do. It's funny how my own lawyer sat in front of me going, "Hey, you know, you get 15 to 20 years. I'm like, "Yeah, but I didn't do it." He's like, "Yeah, but they want you." I'm like, "What do you mean they want me? I didn't do it." "Yeah, but they want you." Today I understand that judges and lawyers and the other lawyer, they all work together. Their job is to take as much money as they can out of you. And when they can't take any more, to just end the case. So what did he do when he knew that my family didn't have money? He forced me into a deal.
Newsflash, Ben, you willingly took a plea deal, and if you thought you were innocent, you wouldn't have admit your guilt to the police and to the court. Ben also goes on to try and assassinate the character of his victim H. He does this by claiming she was already addicted to alcohol, weed, and prescription pills. He basically implies that it was her fault that this happened to her and that Ben and his friends weren't to blame.
So let me give you facts about what we found. H was addicted to alcohol, marijuana, and ecstasy. H was seeing a psychiatrist 7 months before she met us. She was also seeing a psychologist. The psychologist referred her to the psychiatrist. She was addicted to alcohol, weed, and ecstasy. That night she had alcohol. She also smoked from the weed. And the fact that she jumped like that on all the beds in the house and took off her clothes lets me understand that she took ecstasy. You see, but I didn't know that until I went into the reports. When she was seeing her psychologist for that problem, she was 14. Now, what 14-year-old girl do you know that is addicted to alcohol, ecstasy, and marijuana? I don't know any. Clearly, her parents were very bad parents.
And if you already couldn't hate this guy anymore, after these statements, he demands his victim H give him and his friends an apology for what she put them through. It's actually unbelievable.
And H, if you're watching this, I would love for you to apologize to me and to my brother, because you know nothing ever happened to you. We're all a bunch of kids having a good time drinking. I was with P, my brother was with Kat. And it's very sad that me and my brother and my whole family had to go through this. And if you ever want to give us a call, you ever want to message me, I messaged you on Facebook saying I just want closure for this. Because I got fucked for this when I was 18, and now I got fucked for this again. Although nobody did anything wrong to you. And stepping forward and admitting the truth is something that only a grown-up could do. You know, when everybody came at me with all of this, it was like the trauma hitting me again.
This video is filled to the brim with absolutely ridiculous statements like the few I have already shown you. At one point, he even tries blaming his victim's parents for what happened to their daughter. Ben points the finger and blames everyone, including his own victim, for his actions. He has never once even attempted to take responsibility or accountability for his crimes. I'm sure this horrible second response video will inevitably get removed from his channel, just like the first one was, as he tries to hide from his horrible past. Not a single person in his comment section believes any of the lies coming out of his mouth. Wow, this convinced a grand total of 0 people. Saying you weren't convicted of grape, but rather convicted of an S crime against a minor isn't the noble rebuttal you think it is. Calling her parents bad parents after sexually assaulting their daughter is fucking wild. Even though Ben has been thoroughly exposed as a predator and he is being laughed at and shunned by every corner of the internet, he is continuing his alpha male charade on his social medias like nothing has happened. He is even still trying to challenge John Bravo to a cage match in some of his posts, with John hilariously replying, "Are you still at this? You must love the abuse." One of Ben's most recent posts is literally comparing himself to Hitler, so this guy is just losing his mind at this point, and his comment section just continues to eat him alive. This is where the story of King Azoulay comes to a... At least that's where I thought this story ends. It turns out, while I was editing this video, Ben dropped another insane video that I absolutely need to include. The title of Ben's newest video is "They Have Gone Too Far." In this video, he makes the insane claim that his main detractors, John Bravo, Bubba, American Patriot, and JD Delay, have hired a hitman to come and assassinate his mother. And I know that sentence sounds like a joke, but this is something Ben is claiming to be 100% real.
What do you think you're doing? What good? What you're doing is horrible. You're making these men even more emotional and more weak. But these men are not the ones that I worried about so much. It's about this email that I received this morning. An email that sounds like it's coming from a hitman. This kind of an email describes exactly what they're going to do to my mother. You guys are the biggest scumbags. You guys are at the lowest of the lowest. You guys are not real men. The fuck is wrong with you guys? Now I want you guys to see the email that I received. It's disturbing. I've decided instead of you, I'm making your mother my target. I'm stalking her already. I'm going to drug her someday this fall or winter. She is going to touch something greasy, which will be DMSO with an overdose of scopolamine and atropine in it. She'll fall out and stop forming memories as long as it's active. This way, I could take her to a third location, and she won't remember any of it. I am going to sodomize her until her asshole no longer works. Film it all and upload it to the dark web and mainstream porn sites all over, including her real full name, just trying to spread it so she can't ever escape it. Then I'll kindly set her free, uninjured, save for the lifetime incontinence. But your family can afford diapers, can't they? That is a charge. That is 18 USC section code 373, solicitation of violent crime. What you guys are doing is you guys are sending people my way because of your harmful content.
This ridiculous claim was of course quickly dispelled by Bubba and his community less than an hour after this video was posted.
This is so obviously written by his team. His team is actually him, right? I mean, this literally reads like the bullshit he types on his Instagram. This bozo, he's so dumb. He literally wrote this. And then let me real quick show you what the Bubba Discord found out. I mean, I'm just shaking my head right now. So this is why I'm always telling people to join the Bubba Discord. It's like a 24/7 show over there, right? So Jester, big shout out to you, man. He may be a jester, but he is no clown, and he exposed Azoulay big time, right? He actually had boom headshot because like@tail.net is an invalid email address, right? And you know what? Someone could have said, well, the Sicario, he deleted the email. Well, the domain doesn't exist anymore. And Jester found this out. So this email, it's just a fake email. It doesn't exist. It's just, bro, like you wrote this phony baloney email to yourself and you couldn't even use like a @gmail.com. Oh, there's gonna be something really curious as to why you didn't use a real email, because you didn't want anything traced back to you.
Do you know how desperate and crazy you have to be to make up a story about kidnapping and doing horrible things to your own mother in order to try and garner some sympathy online after being exposed as a child predator? This guy is truly sick in the head, and it looks like he is willing to do just about anything to try and deflect the fact that he pled guilty to such a heinous crime. There are many things you can call Ben Azoulay: a liar, a scammer, a fraud, but most importantly, a predator. If you made it to this point in the video, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to learn about such a tremendous piece of shit. I'd like to give a massive shout out to all of my channel members and Goated members. I appreciate the hell out of your guys' support. With all of that being said, I'm Nick Nobody, and until next time, I'm out.